Mega Mike the Movie Man, and today got a mega movie plan. Today, I'm back with another mega movie topic battle for you all. This is gonna be episode 3. So if you missed the first 2 episodes of movie topic battle, make sure you go check out those videos first and then come back to this one. I'll leave those video links down in the description below. But for our episode 3 of movie topic battle, this is actually going to be quite a big video because we're actually going to have the villains of both the Spider-Man live action movies face off with the Batman live action movies. And so we're going to actually have 3 rounds for this movie topic battle, but because it's such a large video, we're going to have a part 1 first, which will be this video focusing on round 1. And round 1 is going to be all about the villain costumes. Yes, villain costumes of Spider-Man movies against villain costumes of the Batman movies. So go ahead, jump down into the comments right now. Let me know your prediction of what costumes you think are going to win in this round 1. Of course, at the end of the video, as the host, I will declare the winner and explain my reasoning. But without further ado, let's get started. Now to get into round 1, and we're going to be comparing the villain costumes of the live action Spider-Man movies with the live action Batman movies. Now let's first take a look at the Spider-Man movies, starting with the Sam Raimi trilogy. Looking at Spider-Man, we have a pretty good Green Goblin costume. Now, I don't think it's perfect. It can look a little Power Ranger-like at moments, but I think overall it is a good costume. I like the glider and how Green Goblin flies with it and all the gadgetry to go along with it, like those pumpkin bombs, I think work perfect for the costume. And I still think Willem Dafoe's performance does shine through the costume. He's still very menacing and terrifying. And so I do think the mask helmet does work pretty decent, even though I don't think it's perfect. And of course, it's not like a super comic accurate costume, but overall, it's solid enough. And it does get improved upon in a future movie, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Next, we have Spider-Man 2 with Dr. Octopus, and I think this is a pretty solid costume as well. I think the octopus tentacle mechanical arms definitely work well in the movie. I like the action sequences with them and how they move and they can scale up walls. So I do think he looks like a Dr. Octopus. I think the trench coat with the sunglasses works fine for the movie. So I don't think it's like the most amazing costume ever, but I do think it's a pretty solid, good costume. And when you see him, of course, you know that's Dr. Octopus. Now we get into Spider-Man 3, and we have a few different costumes to talk about here. Sandman, I think, actually has a pretty good costume as well. That one is definitely very comic accurate, which I really do appreciate. And so when you see Sandman, you know that is Sandman. And I like just how his sand powers shine through with the costume and just how he moves. And those action sequences are really cool when he, turns into sand. And so to me, that definitely works really well. And so overall, a solid costume. The new Goblin is actually a pretty decent costume as well. I like how they made it different from the original Green Goblin, but it's still not like a great costume either. But I do like kind of the glider hoverboard. I think that works okay. I like the goggles. And so I think it's an okay enough costume, but once again, I don't think it's like amazing, and I wouldn't say it's better than the original Green Goblin costume. Also, we have Venom. Now, this is where it starts to go downhill a little bit. The Venom costume, to me, I just don't like in this movie. You know what? You don't have a big menacing Venom. Venom should be big and menacing and terrifying looking. This Venom just did not look like that. It just looked kind of very silly and just not like a great villain at all. And then you didn't even have the Venom spider symbol on the front. So that was pretty disappointing. So all around, just not a good Venom costume in Spider-Man 3, unfortunately. Next, we go ahead and we get to the Amazing Spider-Man movies. And in the Amazing Spider-Man, I was disappointed with this lizard's costume. To me, it just didn't go lizard enough. We should have had the lizard snout. I mean, how did we miss that? Yeah, we got the cool lizard tail, but I don't know, something with the face was just off for me. Didn't look lizard enough, and it just looked kind of weird, this one. To me, just wasn't, comic accurate enough. Just didn't scream the lizard enough to me. So pretty disappointed with that costume. Next, we get into the Amazing Spider-Man 2. We have a lot of costumes to talk about here as well. I think Electro's costume in here is decent, but not great. I do like seeing the electricity and how he moves and flies through the air with the electricity. I think that looks really cool, but just when he's, Electro not using his electric powers, I just think the costume's okay. It's definitely not comic accurate, but they do improve upon it a little bit in another movie, which we will talk about in a bit. So at least it gets an upgrade later. But for the Amazing Spider-Man 2, not so good. And then, the Rhino's a really bad one. Now, this is definitely a fail here. You just have him looking like a mechanical rhino. Like, what is this? I don't, it's like a transformer or something. No, just doesn't work. Definitely not very comic accurate. I just wanted a big rhino man to basically, charge at Spider-Man. And yeah, it just, no. To me, this costume just doesn't work. And yeah, it just isn't a good one. And then we have with the Amazing Spider-Man 2 another Green Goblin. And this Green Goblin, it's okay, but I think they go a little bit too literal with the goblin part of it, where it's like, face starts to change and like biologically he starts to become a goblin. That's a little odd. So I think they did go over the top with that one. But I mean, the rest of the costume, the glider is fine. You know what? But to me, it just doesn't measure up to the original Green Goblin costume, which I think was better. So it's okay, but nothing special. Then we get into the Homecoming Trilogy, and I really do like the Vulture costume in Homecoming. I think it looks very menacing. When you do see it, you're like, oh yeah, that is the Vulture. And then with the mechanical wings and when he starts to fly with them, I just think that looks so cool. And so I actually really do like that Vulture costume. I think it's a perfect way to show, hey, this is the Vulture. You know this villain, but it's more modernized for this movie and fits with the movie's tone perfectly. So I think that's a really good costume. Then we get into Far From Home and we have the Mysterio costume. Hey, this might be actually the best Spider-Man villain costume. It does a great job here. It is perfect with being very comic accurate. You still got the fishbowl, you got the cape, which is fantastic, and then you get to see him moving around and using all his illusions. And I think it just works perfectly. So, a really good costume. When this character shows up, you know it's the Mysterio villain. So, I think this is a really good Spider Man villain costume. Next, we get into No Way Home, and we don't have any new villains here, but we do have some villain costumes that get upgraded, which is nice. First, with Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin, I like how they start adding the purple hoodie, and it's like torn up to get it a little bit more comic accurate. And then we get to see Willem Dafoe's face, and we get to see those expressions more. And so I think that performance shines through even more with this Green Goblin costume. So that is definitely a really good upgrade there. So I like that Green Goblin a lot. Then we have, once again, Dr. Octopus, which, doesn't get a major upgrade here, but gets some nanotech added to the arm. So I think that's a cool addition. Nothing like super amazing, but, it works well enough for the movie. A villain that does get a really good solid upgrade here, though, is Jamie Foxx's Electro. This one gets to be a little bit more comic accurate now. Now we get the yellow electricity instead of the blue electricity. So I actually do like this Electro costume quite a bit. I think it does definitely work in the movie. Now, unfortunately, we do have two villains that are kind of like, with the costume. Not much improvement here, even maybe a downgrade for one of them. So you have the lizard, which once again looks like a dinosaur man, right? That's what they say in the movie. And once again, doesn't have the lizards now and isn't looking like, actual the lizard from the comics. And so to me, I was once again disappointed by the lizard. Why can't they get the lizard right? Why? So disappointed with the costume. And then we get Sandman, but he's like a mud monster now. Like he's always covered in that sand. And to me, I did not like that at all. Now, probably they couldn't get the actor back, so they had to think of a solution. Okay, let's just, make him full on CGI, making him look like a mud monster to at least bring that character back. So I get it. You got to bring the character back if, the actor isn't going to be there. I get it. Okay. But the costume still isn't great, and I actually think it's a downgrade because now he just be looking like a pile of mud, and that is not my favorite Sandman. So didn't like that costume either. So you know what? Overall, Spider Man has some pretty good costumes. I think a couple amazing ones with Mysterio and the Vulture, but then you have some really bad ones like Venom and Lizard. So, you know what? It's pros and cons with the Spider Man villains, definitely. But now we're going to take a look at the Batman villain costumes.
I have given a name to my pain.
What are you?
I'm Batman.
Where does he get those wonderful toys?
Next, we're going to be looking at the live action Batman movie costumes. So let's start with the first two Tim Burton films. We have Jack Nicholson's Joker, and I think this is a really solid costume here. Definitely reminds me of the comics. The smile works perfect in it, definitely has a creepy vibe to it, and it does let Jack Nicholson's performance shine through. So I think it's definitely a really solid costume. Then we get into Michelle Pfeiffer's, Catwoman costume. And I actually think it's perfect because the tight leather just works with Michelle Pfeiffer for obvious reasons. And so definitely a solid costume there. We get into Danny DeVito's Penguin, and I do think they go a little too over the top with the costume. It's not terrible. I think they do have some good Penguin aspects with it, but they do make it a little too penguin like. I think with the flipper hands, I think that's a little too much. And they do make the penguin look really gross. And of course, he should probably have some grossness to him, but I think they maybe do a little bit too much with it. So I think the costume's okay, not bad, but I don't think it's great either. Next, we get into the two Joel Schumacher films, and wow, this is where costumes start to go downhill, definitely. You have Tommy Lee Jones Two-Face, and I really don't like this costume. It's just way too colorful and just, too neon color looking and just stands out too much. And to me, it just gets really silly. And then you got Jim Carrey's Riddler costume, and I don't like this one either. Even though there's a lot of question marks, which I do enjoy, it looks like a lot of the time it's like a onesie pajama, and that just gets too silly for me. So, not a fan of that Riddler costume either. Then we get into Batman and Robin. I think the costumes are a little bit better here. I think Poison Ivy's costume is okay. I think Bane's costume is actually okay, even though the performance for Bane is not good and it's not written well. I think the costume actually works. Got the luchador mask, you got the pumped up Venom. So I think actually the costume is pretty decent for Bane. I think Arnold's Mr. Freeze, once again, has a decent costume. Not perfect. I would like it to be a little bit more comic accurate, but it's decent enough. I think the suit works. It makes sense for how he needs to stay cold. The blue skin definitely makes sense. And for Arnold himself, I think the costume overall does fit well. So I think the costume's decent. He has his freeze weapon, so that works well for it. But it's not like a great costume. But I don't think it's terrible either. Could have been improved upon though. And then let's take a look at the Dark Knight characters here. So I was disappointed with Scarecrow. They could have done something a little bit more, make him look more like a Scarecrow. But no, they just kind of throw a potato bag on his head. So that was pretty lame to me. And then Ra's al Ghul, he's decent. It's a very modern looking costume. Not really much of a costume, actually, when you think about it. So I wish they would have done a little bit something more to kind of make him look a little bit more like from the comics. They could have done something with him. But it's okay. For the movie they're going for, it's okay, but nothing extravagant. Then we get into the Dark Knight Joker. Now, this costume is perfect. This is probably one of the best villain costumes of all time, if not the best. I think it just checks all the boxes. The makeup is perfect, the hair is excellent, the suit is awesome looking, and so to me, it definitely looks like the Joker. You can definitely see this character and be like, oh yeah, that is the Joker from the comics, absolutely. But it is modernized just a little bit to fit with the crime drama movie. To me, it lets Heath Ledger's performance shine through. So to me, it just works all around and has a very scary intensity to it, definitely a creepiness to it. So it just works perfect for the character. So really, really good costume there. Then we get into Two-Face, and it's good, but it's not great. So I do like it a lot better than the Tommy Lee Jones Two-Face costume, and Forever, of course, this is definitely an improvement. But where I think it loses a little bit here is it goes too much with the burnt through skin, and you start seeing like the mouth open up, and you're just kind of, think, wait, there's no way he could live at that point. That is just too much of, the face gone. Now, if they pulled it back a little bit, just, make it burnt, but not like overly do where you start seeing the mouth, I think that would have worked a lot better because I did like the burnt part of the suit, the burnt part of the coin. I think that all works great, but could have been improved upon. So I think it's a good costume, but I think some fixes could have definitely made it a great costume. Next, we're getting into The Dark Knight Rises. And I think Catwoman's costume is actually pretty decent. I think it fits Anne Hathaway perfectly. And, it is a little bit more modern, but at least you get those goggles that kind of flip up like the cat ears. So it's very subtle, but it definitely works for a modern Catwoman. So I'm fine with that one. Bane, I think, is good, but I don't think it's amazing. Now, I like his jacket and, his vest. It's definitely very, like, modern. So I like that. You can definitely see his muscles. And I think the mask is decent, but I don't think it's great. It's definitely not the classic mask we are used to. And, of course, it is going to muffle the voice in a certain way. Now, I like the voice for Bane. I think it is menacing, but I know other people don't really like the voice, and so that kind of brings down the costume a little bit. And you know what? I just, wish they went with a different kind of mask. Let's try a few different things here, and I think that could have been improved upon. So even though I like the Bane costume in Dark Knight Rises, I don't think it's perfect either. So okay, solid, but not amazing. Next, we start to look at the Batman movie, and we have the Penguin, which I think is an absolute perfect costume. Colin Farrell is definitely unrecognizable, and that is the Penguin from the comics, of course. Now, maybe throw in a few different little theatrical elements like a top hat, an umbrella, and a monocle, and then I think we got it perfect there. So it's near perfect, just need a few little bit more theatrical elements added to it, but it's pretty good. And then we have, of course, the Riddler costume we have to talk about. Now, I was really, really disappointed with this costume. To me, it just looked too generic. Didn't look Riddler enough for me. It didn't look theatrical enough for me. Not enough question marks. Gotta add a little bit more question marks. We don't have to go over the top with it, right? We don't have to make it a onesie, but, add a few more question marks. And then the mask, too. The mask just didn't work for me. I don't know. It just wasn't a theatrical enough Riddler. It's not like, to me, when I see that character, automatically I'm like, oh, that's the Riddler. I'm like, wait, let me think about it a second. Oh, okay, I guess that would be the Riddler. But I don't know, just not enough to it for me. Definitely could have been improved upon a lot. Also, you have then Catwoman, and I think the Catwoman costume's okay, but you don't really have anything special with the mask of it, and not enough cat-like to me. So to me, that costume was also a little disappointing. And so those are all those Batman movie live action villains. And so now when we're comparing them against the Spider-Man villains, we have to declare who's going to win this round. And I think overall here, we are actually going to have to give this one, I think, to...
Well, we're waiting.
So I'm gonna have to declare the Spider-Man movie villains the winner. Now let me explain my thought process here. This was a really tough decision. I actually was debating back and forth, and at some points I even had the Batman movie villains winning this round. But why I gave the edge to the Spider-Man villains in terms of just costumes here, I think that they had more consistency, and I think they had some more greats, and I think they had less really disrespectful costumes. So I just think there was a better consistency overall with them. As when I look at the Batman movie villains, you have some that are just really bad in my opinion, like Tommy Lee Jones' Two-Face costume, Jim Carrey's Riddler costume, the Scarecrow costume from the Dark Knight series. I think those costumes are actually really bad and just don't match up with the comics at all. And then even when getting into the Riddler costume for the Batman movie, they had a chance to improve upon the Riddler costume, and maybe it's improved upon, but to me it's not up to standards. It just doesn't scream Riddler enough to me. And so when I look at, hey, what are the amazing Batman movie villain costumes, I really think of the Jokers. You got the Dark Knight Joker, you got the Jack Nicholson Joker. I think those two are outstanding costumes. But what about the other villains? There's just not much there. Yeah, there's some good ones. Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman costume's a good one. Tom Hardy's Bane costume, a good one. But once again, I don't think there's just a lot of standout costumes in these Batman movies. But if I look at the Spider-Man live action movies, especially with the improvements they made, like Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin costume is just absolutely amazing. I think Jamie Foxx's new improved Electro costume is great. I think Alfred Molina's Dr. Octopus costume is great. Yeah, there's some missteps as well, like the Venom costume, yeah, is pretty bad. The Lizard costume isn't great, but the rest of the costumes really are, pretty good to great, especially like a Mysterio costume, which I think is absolutely amazing. The Vulture costume, fantastic. So I just think there's a lot betters with the Spider-Man movie costumes, and there's not as much just terrible with the Spider-Man movie villain costumes. So just a better consistency to me overall. And so that's why I had to declare Spider-Man movie villains the winner for this round.
You're struggling to have everything you want while the world tries to make you choose.
This is all my fault. I can't save everyone.
So that will do it for today's movie topic battle, part 1 of the villains facing off between the Spider-Man movies and the Batman movies. Definitely look forward to part 2 and part 3 that will be coming up in the next couple weeks. Also, go ahead and let me know in the comments below, what did you think of my reasoning in comparison of the villain costumes from the Spider-Man movies and the Batman movies? Do you agree with the conclusion I came to, or would you have actually picked the Batman villain costumes to win? Let me know your reasoning down below. Also, if you're just discovering the channel for the first time, make sure you subscribe right now. I'm going to get you tons of future movie topic battles, movie news, movie reviews, movie rankings, movie haul videos, you name it. We'll talk all things movies on this channel. I don't want you to miss any of that entertainment value. So turn on that notification bell so you don't miss when I post a video.
Come on, hit me! Let's put a smile on that face.
Also, like the video, and this is Mega Mike the Movie Man, minding you to make every day a movie day.